Good evening and welcome. We're thrilled to have you here with us tonight, many of you in person and some of you out virtually watching us from the warmth and comfort of another place. But thank you so much for coming tonight to continue our celebration and our education together. This year, the campus has been working with an anti-racism task force. I know that many of you have participated in the deliberations and actions of that task force, and I can certainly say that there are visible signs on campus that many are taking the theme of anti-racism very seriously, and I hope that we continue to do that, and I want to thank each of you for your participation in the things that we're doing. We have centuries of work behind us that we have to work to make better for the centuries ahead. Our speaker tonight, Kyle Stone, is a part of our community, and I'm told that during his run for the position, had a slogan of "Let's do this together. We can make a difference in Stark County." So a warm Purple Raider welcome, Kyle, to our campus, and I hope that we can do this together and make a difference in Stark County, in all our communities, and in the world. So thank you so much, and thank you for arranging this, Ron, and all of you that worked to make this possible tonight. Welcome to campus.
What is Black history? It is a dirt road our forefathers trod, memories of their lives branded in our hearts. It is a word, a place, a state of mind. Black history is a peek into our ancestors' time. It is a piece of fabric our grandmothers wore, an old rope our grandfathers lived to deplore. It is a slave ship, a middle passage overseas. Black history is a cotton fields and tobacco leaves. It is a plantation overseer and back door crumbs, weeping and wailing, a beating of drums. It is a troubling truth, an unapologetic past. Black history is an entire race struggling to last. It is Mississippi burning and Tennessee town, an evil that lingers to Black people down. It is the book or movie of strength, courage, and will. Black history is the fate of young Emmett Till. It is Little Ruby Bridges, the exquisite Ruby Dee, Carter G. Woodson, Coretta Scott King, a Mahalia Jackson song, a Michael Jackson routine. Black history is the phrase, let freedom ring. It is Cheyney University, the Tuskegee Airmen, the NAACP, the Black History Holocaust Museum. It is a Navy master diver named Carl Brashear. Black history is our legacy, a triumph without fear. It is General Colin Powell, a vaudeville drama, Zora Neale Hurston, and President Barack Obama. It is every single experience of our history. Black history is a story of you and me. By Latoria Basin.
Kyle L. Stone has a deep roots in Stark County community. He is a Canton native of 2001 graduate of Canton-McKinley Senior High School. He went to obtain his BA in Law and Liberal Arts from the University of Finland, shortly thereafter obtained a master's in public administrations, and later his Juris Doctor both in University of Akron. He is a member of Ohio Bar Association and Canton Barrister, Stark County Bar Association, and Norman's Minor Bar Association. Mr. Stone has tried numerous cases in criminal and defense and attorney. He was elected Stark County Prosecuting Attorney in November 2022. In November 2020. He is also an ordained pastor and holds a mastery and degree in ministry in Temple Baptist Seminar. Prosecutor Stone enjoys spending time with his family and friends, specifically his daughter, Kenya, and his granddaughter, Brooklyn Nicole. Please join me in welcoming Stark County Prosecutor Kyle Stone.
Good evening. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you, Ron, for inviting me. Thank you to the president for the wonderful welcome. And thank you all to the students for putting this together. We appreciate you all being here tonight. I do have our Director of Public Affairs and Community Initiatives, Christian Ball, here with us, as well as my outside advocate, and she was a treasurer of my campaign. She don't like me to do this, but Lisa Sims, I'm gonna have to give her a shout out as well. So we appreciate her being here tonight. So I want to be, brief, but at the same time, substance. So one of the things is, in conjunction in working together, to your point, Mr. President, one of my main theme was, let's set a new tone with Kyle Stone. And so it was trendy, it was sounded nice, but the reality is it requires for us to set a new tone in criminal justice system. And so for the sake of having a title, A New Tone of Criminal Justice Reform, Changing the System Inside and Out. So Black history, we have a Black history in criminal justice has a checkered past. And when we understand where we're going, we must understand where we come from, right? Now, y'all heard in my the bio that I'm an ordained pastor. And so while I haven't practiced in ministry for a little over a year, I still need y'all to respond. Amen? Amen. That's more like it. So I need y'all to engage with me tonight so we can make it go faster. So if you don't say nothing, I'm going to take my time. But if you respond, then I'll make sure I be brief, okay? Fair enough? All right. So we must understand the history by which we come from so that we may understand where we are going. When we understand the 3/5 compromise, Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States declared that any person who was not free would be counted as 3/5 of a free individual for the purposes of determining congressional representation. The 3/5 clause thus increased the political power of slave-holding states. I'm just talking about where we're coming from. When we look at the Dred Scott decision, formerly Dred Scott v. John Sanford, legal case in which the U.S. Supreme Court on March 6, 1957, ruled in a 7-2 decision that a slave, Dred Scott, who had resided in a free state and territory where slavery was prohibited, was not thereby entitled to his freedom, that African Americans were not and could never be citizens of the United States, and that the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which had declared free all territories west of Missouri and north, was unconstitutional. The decision added fuel to the sectional controversy and pushed the country closer to the Civil War. Then we go further and understand Jim Crow. In practice, Jim Crow laws mandated racial segregation in all public facilities in the states of the former Confederate States of America and in some others, beginning in the 1870s. Jim Crow laws were upheld in 1896 in the very familiar case Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the United States Supreme Court laid out its separate but equal legal doctrine for facilities for African Americans. Moreover, public education had essentially been segregated since its establishment in most of the South after the Civil War in 1861 to 65. And then we even go further to the Civil Rights Movement. This is just understanding where we're coming from to set the tone for where we have to go. And we took a look at some of the different things that Dr. King fought for, and having served as this Fair Housing and Compliance Manager for the City of Canton, the Fair Housing Act that was pushed and passed after Dr. King's death was important for when it comes to equality in housing housing and those things. And so we must understand, once again, where we come from and what we've dealt with in order for us to understand where we're going. All right? Where we come from matters. Why is criminal justice reform important in these times? First thing is this: everything is being recorded. Everything. We're being recorded right now. But everything is, somebody has a cell phone recording everything. And so why it matters now is when we implement a standard by which we operate, it doesn't matter if we're being recorded or not, we're going to do the same thing. Right? That's the expectation. And so why does it matter in these times? Because it requires a consistent approach coming from a prosecutor's office, coming from our police departments, coming from our community partners, just coming overall. We have to have a consistent approach that we're going to treat people fairly no matter who they are or where they come from. That's how we change a system. We add consistency to the process so that no matter how much money you have, what side of the tracks you grew up on, or whatever you had to deal with, or what kind of lawyer you have, whether it's a court-appointed attorney or whether it's a private attorney that you've had the resources or your family has the resources to retain, you're still going to get treated fairly. The world is watching. Our next generation is watching how we respond. This past summer, 2020 was, everybody can agree that 2020 was a crazy year, right? And what we saw over in our country in multiple occasions is a disproportionate attack on Black men within, at the hands of the police. And so not all of the details we know about, we may not know every single detail, but one thing that we did see is somebody died. We watched it. Someone died at the hands, Mr. George Floyd. We saw him die at the hands of a police officer, those who we are expecting to protect and serve. So why do we have to take action? Because the world is watching. There's an expectation that we take the step and move forward, and we're all responsible for moving forward. We all have to play our part. Just don't sit back and be quiet. Speak up when you have the opportunity to speak up. Don't be afraid of what people might say or what people might think. When I decided to run for office, there were some individuals who said, you're not going to make it. I mean, you're running up against a 16, 17-year incumbent and a 32-year elected official. 32 years straight. Yeah, he has a name. And I said, well, I have a vision and a promise from God, and I expect that because he gave me the promise that it's going to come to pass. And here we are. We have no other choice. That's why we have to take action. We don't have a choice. We must be willing to stand up and say enough is enough. We all have a duty to do that. We can no longer sit back idly by and say, well, if it doesn't come, to my front door, I don't have to worry about it. Because sooner or later, if it don't affect you now, it will affect you later. My grandma said, keep living. Sooner or later, the things that we think may not touch our lives will soon touch our lives, either indirectly or directly. The United States has the highest incarceration rate. That's why we have to take action. It was fueled by the war on drugs, the tough on crime perspective. We can be tough on crime. It's okay to be tough on crime if we also are providing ways to address the economic disparities within different communities. If we're going further to address how a mistake at 18 with a felony can affect an individual's ability to gain gainful employment for the rest of their lives. And so it's important that we take action because it's required. We must be willing to move forward. We must operate. This is what we have to do. Influence is no longer enough. there must be an infiltration. It's one thing to say, I'm marching, for this to happen. It's another to infiltrate the system. How do we infiltrate the system with good, honest individuals? We need more individuals in minority groups to join our police forces. We need people being willing to step out and balance, because this is what we hear. Well, I'm not going to that side because, that's the side that snitches go to, and that's an issue within Black and brown communities. We need, if we're going to change the system, that we can no longer be satisfied with attempting to change it from the outside. It has to be changed from the inside. And so how do we do that? We infiltrate, meaning I'm using infiltrate because it was the best descriptive word, but not in a negative, in a positive. Meaning we go in and we need more individuals, we need more minorities becoming attorneys as prosecutors. We are still only 2% of the makeup of attorneys and lawyers in the country are minorities. It's still a very small amount of minority attorneys. And so we need individuals. Why is this important? Because there's discretion at all the levels of the criminal justice system. Discretion starts with the police force. They have discretion whether or not they're going to arrest somebody, whether or not they're going to ask certain questions, whether or not they're going to be aggressive, whether or not they're going to let somebody go. They have that discretion. Then the next level comes to the prosecutor's office, and then the prosecutor has some discretion, like whether or not they're going to accept a plea, whether they're going to be hard-nosed and only go for the jugular because they want the maximum sentence. And then finally, the judge has discretion. And so when we have individuals who have a cultural perspective that's different from the majority, it adds value to your process, and it adds a perspective that may not have been there before. And so, for an example, certain things that may seem, I was in a defense attorney in a case, and it was a case between a Black woman and her husband, and there were some text messages. And so some of the text messages were extremely aggressive with some cuss words, some MFers, and some this and some that. And then the next question is, hey, can you go by the Taco Bell to get me some food? Yeah, I'll get it. And it was no big deal. Culturally, not saying that it's okay, culturally, I understand it because I've seen it in my family. You know what I mean? And so we've seen it. And so culturally, I have that understanding. But others who've never experienced it culturally may find it very offensive and count that against the individual when necessarily it doesn't apply. And so it's important for us to have individuals in office in the police force that has a different cultural perspective and understanding that allows you to provide some insight. And insight is important. You all have insight in your own different area that other people can't take from you. You have a perspective and a mindset that you have the ability to tap in and to give that other people may not be able to give. So don't be quiet when there's opportunities for you to provide your insight, when there's opportunities for you to give your perspective. Don't sit back and be quiet. Speak up and say, well, I feel it should be this way, and here's why. Always try to provide a why. That way people can follow your understanding, and they too can be enlightened as well. It's not enough just to march. We have to go further. Marching is good for press and to make make people aware of why we're doing it, but we cannot stop just by doing marches or one event. You gotta infiltrate the system. You gotta go further. You gotta be willing to say, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to put myself in a position to ensure. One of the young men that spoke before we came here talked about going to medical school as the next step. when we infiltrate, because we've seen studies that say black women have a very hard time convincing or sharing their perspectives when it comes to their body and their health, and they tend to not be treated the same way. You guys can do the research if you don't believe me, but that's, what the research is saying. When we have individuals within the system that understand it more, you're in a better position to provide better services. So when we have individuals who are African American, Hispanic, Asian, that's not of the majority in your criminal justice system, they can provide a perspective that normally would not be received. That's not saying that we have to go and everybody in the criminal justice system needs to be a minority. We're just saying that when we have effective and fair representation, it makes a difference. And so as we talk about what we're doing from the inside out, we must operate with integrity, or it challenges the efficacy of the vision. If my vision is to implement and to make sure that our system here in Stark County is operating with unity, transparency, and justice, and then I'm throwing a rock and hiding my hand, I'm affecting the efficacy of my vision. Because now our potential community partners, as well as the community as a whole, can't trust what I'm doing. And so integrity matters. If I say that I intend to review all of our cold cases, that's what I intend to do. I was having a conversation with one of our assistant prosecutors earlier today, and I said I made some promises to the people of Stark County, and I intend to come forth and come through with every promise that I made. I wouldn't have made the promise if I had no intentions of coming through on those promises. And so we gotta operate with integrity. We must be willing to be transparent in that process. If we're okay with integrity and we're trying to be operate on that level, transparency is a must. Now, granted, certain things you can't get exposed to while a case is pending or a case is being investigated and whatnot, but afterwards, you should be able to see the results of that case. You should be able to see the results of similar charges. No matter who the individual is, they're getting the same treatment. It doesn't matter if they have a public defender or a retained attorney, they're getting the same treatment. And transparency helps us achieve that. When justice is the focus, it's easy to be transparent. It's when you got some underhanded and undertones is when it's hard to be transparent, because people, the public at large, is going to see and expose the faults of your administration. We must be willing to stand up at all costs, even in the face of adversity, even when politically it's not correct, when politically it might be career suicide. At the end of the day, and this is what I operate under, is when I go to bed at night, I got to be able to sleep, knowing that I did right by the people, by the citizens. And so if that means people aren't satisfied or happy, or it might be a political suicide, if it's the right thing to do in the eyes of justice, Kai, you can bet your as much money as you got that Kyle Stone is going to do what's right. Why? Because once again, when I go home, I got to be able to sleep with peace. The job that I have is a stressful job, and it's a lot of responsibility. It affects and influences many different areas within our community. It touches, our statutory clients. It touches our criminal justice system, from the municipal court to the common pleas court. This position is with a lot of responsibilities. And so when I go to bed and go to sleep, I want to be able to sleep. And so it has to be that we do it right and we stand up for what's right. It's not just based on my position, but we all have a duty to stand up for what's right. Because if we're silent, We are just as guilty as the individual committing those things and those harms to our friends, our family, our community. We must be willing to think about the ones who had it. When we talk about, well, it's difficult to stand up. They may not respond. They may not like me. They may not appreciate. Just think back, Dr. King, what he had to go through. Think about what Rosa Parks had to go through. Think about what Sojourner Truth had to go through. Think about those individuals who had it much harder than we have it now. We got some benefits because of time and opportunity that it's not as hard as it was before, but we still have to stand up and speak out for what's right, for what's fair and what's equitable. People, we have to also not only understand and stand up, we got to acknowledge those who paved the way and who created the pathway for how we've gotten where we are. And so, I always try to take out the opportunity to honor the late Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones. I do that because she was, in fact, the first African American to be elected a county prosecutor. And that was in 1990, 30 years ago. I am currently the only African American to be currently holding the county prosecutor spot in the 88 counties in Ohio. I'm also the second and then first African American male. And so these times and these circumstances are important for us to have individuals who have an overarching perspective and vision for all people to be treated fairly and equitable. One of the things is important to understand, and I tell people, I got a response. I was at an event, and someone made the comment that now that Kyle Stone is in office, he will be giving black folks a get out of jail free card. And so, that's so incorrect. The reality is we just want to ensure, I want to ensure that no matter who you are, you're going to be treated fairly out of my office. And if it's not in my office, but I know about it, that I speak up and use the platform that I've been given to speak up and speak out against injustices on whomever it might be against, right? We should be speaking up for our brothers and sisters in every area, no matter who it is. If it's not right and it's not fair, we all should be speaking up. We must also understand that we must let people, as I lead, I must lead with transparency. I must lead with people being able to see the operations of our office, how we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and what we're coming to. As a leader, you can't expect people to follow you if you can't be transparent with them. Now, some stuff ain't none of your business, and you just got to mind your business. That's just reality, right? Some stuff just isn't for everybody and everything, but you have to be able to lead with transparency. So sometimes there has to be times when you're vulnerable and that you can show people that you can relate to them in that vulnerability. And to be able to, in spite of the vulnerability, I can be strong and stand up for what's right and what's fair, right? You want the people to see you do it. If I can't see the system at work, then I can't trust it. That's one of the problems of our community and why people can't trust the system, because they just don't get to see how it works. And it's important from a history standpoint because there was a lot of things that happened in secret to African Americans. And, they get charged with a crime, they have a trial the very next day, and by the end of the day, they're sentenced to death. So when we look at Black history and where we come from, transparency is important for people to trust the system. And I'm almost through. You must lead, we must lead, I must lead by example. I cannot tell you to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm not willing to do it. I have to be able to lead by example. And so if I'm telling you today, speak up for injustices, speak up for what's not right, and then something happened in alliance with a police officer and I just sit back and be quiet, I'm not leading by example. And so I have to be willing, and I'm only using that as an example, trust and believe, but I have to be willing to speak up if I'm expecting you all to do the same thing. You must be willing to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. We have to. We can't just talk about it. We gotta, excuse my grammar, we gotta just be about it. Talks is cool, but with no action, that's all it is talking. So there must be some action behind what you say you're going to do. There must be some action behind your meetings. There must be some action behind your marches. There must be some action behind your vision. A vision without action is only just that, a vision. We must add action to whatever it is that we do. Don't just identify others' biases. Make sure you identify your own. We're good at pointing out when others are racist, or when other people have biases, or when other people do this. But have we really taken a step back to ensure that we are evaluating our own biases? Because here's the reality. I don't know if you ever heard it, but we all have biases. Every single one of us in this room have biases and perspectives because of our life experiences, because of our education, because of things that we've seen and things that we haven't seen. We all have biases. The key isn't about whether or not you have biases. The key is whether your biases affect how you do your job, how you operate as a police officer, how you operate as a prosecutor, how you operate as a defense attorney, how you operate as a judge, how you operate as an advocate. All of those individuals play a part in the criminal justice system. And so the question, once again, is not if you have biases, because we all have them, is whether or not your biases are affecting your decision making. Identify issues and call out those who are responsible for the issue, even if it's in your own office or if it's in your own backyard. So I'm using myself as an example. If there is an issue and I've identified it, guess what I have to do? I got to call it out and work on it. So when we talk about understanding, changing the in criminal justice reform from the inside out, we need more individuals on the inside willing to speak up to the outside to change the culture, to change the perspective, to change what we do and how we operate. Not until we get individuals willing to do that will we see a substantial change in our criminal justice system. I, for one, as the Stark County Prosecuting Attorney, can assure you that you will see change coming out of my office. We already have started. We're already putting things in place. We've already had meetings to implement. We're going to do whatever it needs to be done to ensure that justice is served throughout Stark County. Thank you. I know we're going to do a Q&A for a few moments, but that is all. If you have some added questions, I know somebody's going to read a few of them, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Oh, perfect. Okay, so like Mr. Stone said, we're going to do a brief Q&A, and if you have any additional questions that weren't submitted with your registration, you can go forward and ask him after I read off these questions. Just raise your hand and stand, but keep your mask on, and then we'll try to work our way around. So, sound good? So our first question for you is, with the current climate in mind, how do you balance voicing injustices while attempting to stay politically correct?
One of the assurances that I have made, and I've made it throughout the meetings that we've had, is that politics has no place in my office. Justice doesn't have a political party. Justice doesn't have a race. Justice doesn't have a sex or an age. Justice is justice all by itself. And so sometimes it's not what was politically correct. It's about, is it justice or not? Is it fair or not? And so it won't come down to political correctness when it comes to my office and how we operate. It would only solely be based on justice, fairness, or it's not.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question for you is, how can I, a white woman, be a better ally?
I feel those questions are unique. And I think we miss the moment and miss the essence of the power of coming together when we pose questions from that perspective as a white woman. It doesn't matter. It's not a white or black thing. Is as a person, what should I do? Speak up. Do what's right when you see the injustices. Speak up. Just don't sit back and be quiet about it. Be willing to be proactive rather than reactive. And so I think it's important for us to have that. To me, that adds to the separation at times. Is I don't expect you to do anything, and I'm not picking on you, but I don't expect you to do anything different as a white woman than I do expect for an individual who's a black woman. You see what I mean? I just expect for us to have the same mindset of being able to say, hey, this is wrong. And we have to take action because this is wrong.
Perfect. Our next question, how influential of a role does political party affiliation play in being a prosecutor?
So, once again, as I stated before, it can play a part. Let it be clear that it can play a part in different jurisdictions and different situations, but it should not play a part. Just like our judges traditionally run as a nonpartisan, our prosecutors probably should be running the same way, because the reality is, once again, justice doesn't have a political party. And how can you say red or blue? Like, justice is justice. You just can't really decipher between right and wrong. I mean, so it's just really about making sure that you're doing right by all people, being fair and being equitable, and that has to be the approach.
Perfect. Our next question's kind of like a 2-in-1. What do you see as the most pressing problem for Stark County as our newest elected prosecutor, and how can students get involved to promote education, reconciliation, and healing efforts in Stark County?
That's a good question. The first part is, one of the things that we see right now, we have a drug issue and we have a gun violence issue going on right now. And we have other crimes and other things that are going on, but the majority right now is drugs. We're seeing a lot of fentanyl, for example, coming in, or fentanyl-related influences on drugs. We're seeing people fentanyl now in what they call, what Percocets and pills. So I know y'all don't have this problem here at Mount Union, but just in case, be careful of buying pills and buying things from people, because they're lacing them with fentanyl, and people are dying because of it. In Canton, a few weeks ago, we had 2 overdose deaths that were connected to pill purchases. And so that's what I'm assuming. I don't know any information about it, but that's what I hear on the streets. And so we just need to be clear and understand. So drugs is what's going on. And then we have a lot of shootings. And, if you got a Ring app or a neighborhood app in Canton, everybody knows that, there's always, I get notifications on my Ring app, shooting, shots fired on such and such street, or shots fired here. And so shootings and violent crimes are a problem right now. And so we just want to make sure that as a new prosecutor, we're evaluating it from a fresh perspective and then implementing strategies and plans that we believe would ultimately assist individuals in those areas. Hopefully we'll be able to achieve it. And then the second part of that question, what was that again?
How can students get involved to promote education, reconciliation, and healing efforts in Stark County?
So, create organizations to do just that. Contact our public relations office and whatnot in community engagement. Their opportunities are going to be coming forth where we're going to ask the community to get involved, to participate in different seminars and programs, just to be educated and to be aware of the current environment, current issues, current trends that we see in the criminal justice system. So just be aware, be willing to be a leader and an advocate as a leader, and I think that that's the best way, especially here in your local community. Be an advocate here first and allow that advocacy to grow. And then, like I said, when opportunities come within our office, we will absolutely let the public know and they can get involved.
Awesome. And then our last question here was, how do we make whole systemic change to the judicial system as it relates to people of color?
Once again, it goes back to we have to infiltrate. And I say that, once again, infiltrate from a positive standpoint rather than the negative. But infiltrate meaning get involved, get in positions to where you can influence and bring some insight and perspective to areas that traditionally do not have insight from Black and brown individuals.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have any additional questions? Okay, I'll go there first.
Okay, my question has to deal with my experience on the grand jury. So I served grand jury duty for Stark County, and I was the only person of color and also the only person under the age of 30. In my experience, about 3 months, I experienced, no offense to anyone in the room or anyone listening, but I experienced a handful of 8 to 10 middle-aged white women who didn't really understand or ask questions of what was going on. And during my feedback after it was over, because I don't believe I had a good experience, and during my feedback, I suggested that they have bias training or some kind of survey that they have people take. Because just some of the questions that I would ask during those trials or while we were debating, no one thought of. And it was pretty much, oh, this person was stopped, what happened should have happened. And so I just want to know, like, with your role, what's something that can improve who we select to be on grand jury, or if we see everyone should be fit to sit on grand jury?
Great question. So one thing is this. This is why infiltration is important, because you were asking questions from your own personal understanding and perspective that weren't going to be asked had you not been there. That's one thing. Second thing is, how we get grand jury and individuals to sit on the jury is from your license as well as voter registration. So one of the reasons why we don't always have a lot of participation on jury and grand juries is because people aren't registered to vote and or they don't have a valid license. And so that's where the information is pulled from. Also, the grand jury is a function of the common pleas court and not the prosecutor's office. And so the common pleas court is over the grand jury. We only present cases. But that's excellent feedback, and it's hard to say, that's why we do voir dire in the process, where we ask questions in regards to people, especially in a jury trial. In that situation, we go through the voir dire process where we ask individuals if they have any biases, or we'll ask them, did you experience this before? And that helps us find out if there's a bias. And so those are the things that's important, and I would recommend you contact the common pleas court and provide some suggestions in regards to what you think would be helpful to that, or contact me and we can have a conversation offline about more perspective, especially with you being African American male and under 30. I think you can provide some insight that'll be helpful. Next young lady.
Who else had a question?
So in regards to like infiltrating the system, I know you spoke about like mistrust with those systems and like the fields that you named. I think a lot of that comes from like wrongdoings that we see and like things that we experience. So as like a person in the Black community, how would we go about combating our own mistrust? Like, is it like, should we like kind of put that aside of us? Because I think a lot of the mistrust is not just like us like not like being angry, but also just us having fear and trauma from our experiences. So like, how would we combat those mistrusts?
So, not to act as if I'm a psychologist or that I have the credentials to but I would say the first start is be careful of generalization. Just because I had an experience like this at this point in my life, or I had an experience with a teacher in high school, doesn't necessarily mean that in college I'm going to have that same experience. So I would say be careful of generalizations. Also be willing to have a conversation. Be willing to sit down and talk and get understanding. One of the chiefs that I met with said that he, at the NAACP conference a few years back, he and some other police chiefs came for an event and they had to sit down dinner and was able to sit down with different individuals. They were able to ask different questions, and it provided a different understanding and perspective that the chief said he didn't have before, as well as some of the individuals who were asking the questions. So my recommendation would be always be willing to talk. Always be willing. Sometimes talking doesn't get you anywhere. Sometimes that's, the reality. But be willing to at least talk if the opportunity presents itself. Because you will find that sometimes that experience that you had a few years ago was an isolated incident, and that was just a bad, hateful person. And that's not generally what you're going to see as you progress through life. Hopefully that answered your question. You're welcome.
Yes, first, my name's Tony. I used to be the director of safety here at the university for 13 years, 30-year law enforcement officer, retired Canton PD. Just more of a statement than anything else. We hear the word never thrown out a lot. And I wish my father, a graduate of Mount Union, were alive to see this never standing here. After the decades on the streets of Canton, you heard things like the prosecutor's office will never have a Black person up in there. And it was known through my career that it was basically a whites-only club. And it shows that our vote counts. That I feel my one vote might have been the one that did it. Your one vote, Dr. Silva, might have been the one that did it. So having you here in this position is so important. It is to all of us because it represents change. You cannot stop change. So, and I love what you said about infiltration. We've got to be the change agents from the inside. It's a shame when you look at Stark County and you can look at all the law enforcement agencies countywide and say, okay, make a list on a legal pad. How many agencies have female officers? How many agencies have officers of color? And you get that same old response. We've got one. We've got two. We've got one. Well, nobody ever applies. And I heard that as a former safety director. I heard that people weren't applying. We have got to get involved, as Prosecutor Stone stated, from the inside. You'll never get a position if you don't apply for it. That's right. We're not asking for a special treatment, just equal.
That's right.
So apply, prepare, and move forward. And I think with you at the helm of the county prosecutor's office, we will see movement forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it.
Is there anybody else that had any questions that I missed? No? Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity once again. To our president, thank you. Thank you once again for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity. God bless you, and I will stick around for a few moments if you guys want to chat. There was a program that I'm interested in and want to be a part of. So once again, thank you. God bless.
I think tonight has been very inspiring with the supportive welcome from our university president and the engaging keynote and discussion with Stark County Prosecutor Kyle Stone. And we wish you success and good luck in your quest for equality and justice. And on behalf of the university, I would like to present you with this gift. It's actually a pretty nice blanket. It's getting cold outside. So. I would also like to say thank you to everyone who had a part in presenting this celebration of Black history, culture, and African American contributions. And I would also like to thank you all in the audience for coming, especially us in person for braving the elements and being here, and also everyone who tuned in virtually, thank you as well. And so we would urge you to travel back to your home safely, and also don't forget that there are more upcoming Black History Month events, and those events should be in the program that you received when you came here. So be sure to check those out. And that is all we have for you. Good night, and thank you for your support.